So social media is pretty good at showing us pictures of nice bottles of wine and the sorts of wines that the wine trade increasingly calls iconic. But it's not necessarily always very good at talking about why those wines might be interesting and why someone who hasn't ever tasted them might actually find it worthwhile to do so, and what might be the distinguishing features, the predominant characteristics of the sort of these wines that, just like the Médoc first growths, are so expensive these days and so traded and so sort of visible, but also increasingly, tasted by fewer and fewer people, I think. So I thought it could be interesting to do a little series, and I wanted to start with a bottle of Château Latour. We've opened this for Sunday lunch, so it's going to be a nice lunch, and there's a one-year-old crawling around over there who just had his first taste of Latour. This is probably, for me, the first growth with which I have the most experience in Bordeaux, at least after Briand, perhaps. And, very distinctive wines, very distinctive label, but very distinctive wines as well. And this is coming up age 25 this year, and look, it's still ruby black. So age 25, makes a mockery of the drinking windows that wine critics give to these wines, because this is still an infant. I decanted it for a couple of hours. We've got about another hour to go till roast beef is ready and rested. So, but it's really blossoming. I mean, it's typically Latour in the sense that is very almost primordial. If in a state like Mouton Rothschild is more sort of sensual and exotic and rich and dramatic, and Lafite is more sort of cedary, cigar boxy, more elegant, you could say, more medium-bodied, less muscular, than Latour is a sort of primordial, powerful, brooding wine that takes a very long time to unfold. The site, this vineyard by the banks of the Gironde, where the Gironde estuary sort of tempers the climate, and the gravel soils are very draining. It's a great site, and it just seems to impose itself on the vintage to the extent that I think often the so-called off vintages of Latour can be just as good as the great vintages. Look at a vintage like 2002 today, which is fabulous. I mean, 1996 was quite an acclaimed vintage for Cabernet Sauvignon, particularly in the northern Médoc, and it's absolutely living up to its status as one of the wines of the vintage in Bordeaux this year. The challenge with a wine like this for somebody who hasn't ever encountered it before is, first finding an example that's at least semi-mature. When you have to wait till the wine's 25 before I'm being bitten, that's remarkable. You have to wait till the wine's 25 before you can start drinking it. Not everybody has the patience for that. It's not easy to find bottles that have been necessarily perfectly stored, although the Château is now late releasing wines, which helps, having left the Place de Bordeaux. The other thing is to not be afraid to throw a wine like that, a young wine like that, in a decanter for a couple of hours. I mean, it's really, nothing's going to happen to it. Don't worry that it's going to sort of implode. On the contrary, it just gets better and better. It needs a lot of air to sort of soften up and open up. And now you've got this classic, Latour aromas, sort of crushed black currants, bit of cigar wrapper, English walnuts, all sorts of savoury, sapid nuances. So I'm pretty excited to get into this with the roast beef, and I suppose I probably have to pour most of this glass back into the decanter, or my guests will think I've been greedy. But anyway, a few thoughts on Château Latour, and maybe next time we might do something interesting from Burgundy or whatever, and try to say a few words about some of these wines, which I think deserve more than just to be pretty faces on social media.